Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome as you start coming on in. This is Sick of This Shit Publications. I'm Nick Parrow, not your dad, here for a discussion on intelligent masculinity with someone I got to meet a couple weeks ago here now, while I was out in Minneapolis for the Abolish ICE live event put on by Save America Movement, Valor Media Network, support with Veterans Fighting Fascism, Valor right there. Looking good. I like the Valor hoodies; those are nice. And with Midas Touch involved in there too. They did really good promotion for it as well. Ken Harbaugh, a bunch of really great folks. I got to meet this gentleman right here, Forrest Page, who is a teacher, photographer, activist, and got to have a good time out in Minneapolis, interacting with the community. And Forrest, do you mind introducing yourself to folks
Yeah.
as they come on in and say hi and what it is you do, and who you are?
Well, I will do just that. My name's Forrest Page. I've been a teacher here in Grand Rapids, Michigan for 18 years now, almost 2 decades. Father of four, and someone who dabbles in a lot of different things. I'm a photographer, graphic design, political activism. They all kind of intermingle somehow. I work with Valor Media, doing graphic work for them, but then I had the opportunity to go to Minneapolis as a photographer to capture the event with Dropkick Murphys, and that was, I still find myself back on the street there looking at the memorial, and kind of gets a little bit what we might talk about in a bit, but I found myself overwhelmed with emotion just standing in the middle of the road. And I'm very thankful I went out there fairly early. Just myself, everyone else was trying to figure out what was going on, and I wasn't expecting it. And all of a sudden, I was getting a little emotional, and which is a little bit about me. um, Other thing, yeah, I think I hit the main talking points there.
Yeah, well, Forrest, it's really good to have you. And I know the I wasn't really expecting the memorial the way it was when I walked there. I was expecting there to be a memorial of some sort, but I wasn't expecting how large and how amazing it was. And like there was candles that were lit the entire time. It was raining, and candles were still lit the entire time.
Yeah.
The community took care of it. It was beautiful to see,
Yeah.
and it was really sad to see, but it was at the same time really beautiful. And it showed
Yeah,
the heart of Minneapolis.
the community itself, you could tell just in the faces of the people that had gone through trauma, but we're still together, and still there was still some joy in it, and I was happy to be a part of that side of things, the joyful middle finger waving side toward the end. Not that it's over, but through the worst of what it seems like they were going to go through. But that, watching the video, that I think it was a Saturday morning, was one of those seminal moments that I'll never forget. Watching it, what I was doing, 9/11 type, where it stores in your brain. It's just there. It'll always be there. You might not remember your name, but you're going to remember where you were and how you felt. And I'll never forget being so shaking angry. Like literally my hands were shaking as a parent. And it's not like me. I don't get there very often. And so to be there standing in front of the memorial and the exact spot where it all happened, it was very moving. Very
Yeah,
moving.
yeah, and I remember. Well, I know I looked out the donut shop window where that one of the first videos I think most of us saw,
Hmm.
that came out that day. I stood there for a little bit. I remember just looking out and going, this is where it happened. Like,
Yep. It hits you, and to think those people have been living that moment probably a lot for a while now.
yeah. And so it was that in that that experience is going to stay with me, I think, forever. I know I'm not going to forget being there and seeing that, and being there and seeing the community come out in such a wonderful and amazing way, continuously, and all the community that is still coming out. And we saw it on No Kings this past weekend with Minneapolis and St. Paul area. Is Brass Solidarity was back out again, and they were there at the Abolish Ice Live event. And wow,
Yep.
what a fucking fun band to listen to! And you could see and hear it in them how excited they are to bring their community together, but how angry they are underneath.
Yeah.
Did you get that sense too? Like, what did you sense as emotions that were going on while you were there, other than just
So
the joy that we were all trying to
it was a very unique spot that you could tell that they've been through something, some kind of trauma. There's almost a look to trauma um, that I deal with a lot in my day job, that you can usually see it, but at the same time, it was conflict free, and an event with thousands upon thousands of people in a small parking lot shoved together in front of this space. And I don't recall conflict. I don't recall yelling, anger, anyone having any sort of exchange that wasn't positive. It's pretty unique that way. I've been to a lot of concerts and a lot of events, and there's usually someone doing something they shouldn't and someone calling them out. But it was almost just community, like what you think of how a community should respond to something.
Mhm.
Seems like is what they did, and they were almost uniquely qualified after the George Floyd protests and all of the outcomes, things that came from learning how to do events and protests and trauma. It's like they were experts, and which is probably why ICE isn't there in the numbers that they were anymore.
It's horrifying to think that a city would have to have these trauma mechanisms already in place, because that's really what it comes down to. Is there's trauma mechanisms put in place to the city to resolve these things.
Right.
And it's great that they have these support structures. And as our friend Dr. G would say, is it's a parallel system, but also is that oh shit, sorry. There we go. Doc G would say to us is that, because you talked about it a little bit, is the feel of abuse, is that fascism, or what we're facing right now, is abuse at scale, is domestic
Yeah.
abuse or domestic violence at scale as a governmental system, whereas say democracy is community at scale. And we are right now in the fight to build community before fascism becomes the thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and so, can you talk a little bit about? I'm going to step away just for a second. I got to let my dog back in. Can you talk while I'm out just a little bit about how you feel? You said you're getting ready to do some traveling, and you told me that you're getting ready to do a little bit of traveling, and there are increased presence of ICE now at airports, even though yours may not be on the list currently, but there's now ICE that is occupying airports. How are you planning to talk to your kids
Yeah.
about this type of thing, and what they should look out for their safety and for the safety of others? And I'll be
Yeah.
right back while you're answering that.
We'll do. I feel somewhat uniquely privileged as a white dude with children who look like me, blonde hair, blue eyed children, that I know I'm not going to have too many issues with ice unless my mouth or fingers get the better of me. But we will talk about it, especially my 15-year-old and 13-year-old. They're aware of what's going on in the world. They're aware of happenings. I don't keep what I do a secret from them. I don't always talk to them about it, but we like to lead with our values. So there will be some discussions on what to do if I don't anticipate any situations, like I said, in Detroit. But if I see anything, I'll have my phone out and we will just keep on moving unless there's a scenario that requires intervention. I don't know. But fortunately, like I said, I haven't had to put too much thought there. I probably need to, and to make sure that they're all mentally healthy getting through the airport, because that's going to be stressful enough with the 5-year-old and the 2-year-old and 6 carry-on bags. So
Yes.
we'll kind of see how that shakes out.
Yeah, traveling can be stressful. So find way. I mean, you've done it a lot, anyways. But
I've never
family hasn't.
never taken the crew on a plane before. Normally we drive places, so we'll see how it goes.
Flying is with smaller kids is a unique adventure sometimes. What a As a fellow parent of 2 kids who are roughly the same age distance apart from each other that you have, and we've traveled a lot with ours from young to now. Actually, Polly, I know Jen, Bud, and I talked about this a little bit ago with Walter Ryan, but I didn't put my finger fully on it. Was about the boycott flying right now. Is I actually almost suggest against boycott flying. As I say, we should be going to maybe not flying, but going to the airports to at least express our feelings and protest what ICE is doing if they're in your area. But if airlines are pushing back, like Delta did for the TSA agents, is you should be not incentivizing too much. Flying is expensive as shit. So if you're only going, if you need to, and you can afford it, maybe, but flying's just expensive as shit. But I don't say don't fly, because I don't think it's the airline's fault explicitly at the moment, and I don't think TSA is at fault at the moment either, which is weird to say because I don't really like TSA that much because they're a pain in the ass. But at least they're not ICE. So yeah, I just the real point I wanted to make as a parent is take care of your kids. Don't worry about what other people say. Like if you're
Yeah.
flying and somebody on the plane gets pissy because your kid's making noise, like I give mine. We always download videos and stuff before we get on the plane so that they always have
Yeah.
movies to watch and things like that. So, and we let them like crawl on the floor when they were little underneath our seats, and the flight attendants tended to be okay about some of the stuff like that. So, and if they're small enough and cute enough, the flight attendants will sometimes take your kids and walk them up and down the aisles, just so that they can get some like little exercise because you can see them the whole time.
Yeah.
And a lot of the folks like babies, and they just like because they like babies.
Who doesn't?
Most people like babies.
Yeah. My 5-year-old's a big airplane kid. Airplanes are his things. So he'll probably end up in the cockpit flying the thing at some point. But
good.
It'll be an adventure.
Good. I think the stewards and stewardesses like the interactions because it gives them something fun to do too. And kids are always a hoot. But anyway, we're here to talk about masculinity today. Welcome, y'all. I'm Nick Perro, not your dad. I'm joined by Forrest Page, and this is Sick of This Shit Publications, and we're doing masculinity discussions again because I don't hate to say it. Men, we suck. White men, we really suck. And a lot of us are now out here very loudly pushing back because we don't want the shitty percentage of men to define who we are. And so I've been dedicating the last 3 months so far to helping redefine and build masculinity in an intelligent way. And I've been having some really good discussions. And Forrest, I'm really glad you're here for this to be a part of this discussion and to build on your experiences and add them into the collection of experiences. Um, sorry. And so, just so you know, too, while we do this, is after this discussion, you'll get a full write up. I do sort of a profiling on you in this, what we talked about today, your experiences with masculinity, and then they get added into the overall series, the written articles. And
Very cool.
we've had some really, really great feedback. People seem to be one just happy that we're offering masculinity that doesn't suck, and one that isn't degrading to everybody around them, um, and actually offers often fairly easy tips and tricks and just tools for life that men can follow and start taking practice in, because it's really not that hard to not be an asshole. And it's not that hard to suck less, is something I say here. It's just suck less. um,
Yep.
and so we're
It's
building
not
that.
hard to it's not hard to admit that you kind of suck sometimes too. And
Yeah,
the
and it's not hard to let your emotions out either. I mean, it can be, but it's okay to feel. Like, you don't have to be a robot. And we've already had emotion in from Forrest in this episode. Like, this is a place where it's comfortable to cry if you need to. It's comfortable to laugh, to yell, get angry, do whatever you need to do in this space, because it's for us. Um, and I think a lot of folks in our audience have been enjoying getting to hear all these different perspectives from various men. And so let's get into some really good questions. I'm actually going to ask some questions today, and we're going to build off of this. And I'm going to try and keep on track for once, because I don't always do that. I ramble a lot, and we like to meander. So everyone, we're going to try and actually stay on the question set today for a little bit. But we can dig into the articles or the questions as we go, and any follow up we might have. So, Forrest, let's get into this, my friend, as we talk about intelligent masculinity. And so, my first question for you today, or first interview question for you today, is who has been one of the most influential masculine figures in your life, and why? This can be for a positive or negative reason. This person doesn't have to be living. They can be a historical figure, they can be current figure, whoever it is in your life, that a masculine figure that has played a massive role for you.
yeah, I have, probably a stereotypical answer for a lot of people, for good or bad. But mine is my father. He's still with us, and I'm very thankful. I grew up in a unique family in the fact that there's very little divorce, and most of my family lived in the same area. My family and then our relatives were all fairly close, and everyone's stayed together. It's a traditional American nuclear family. And I had the benefit of growing up poor. Growing up, my dad had a great job as an engineer at GM that he hated, and he made the decision in his late 20s that he was going to quit the job, go back to school, get a degree, and become a teacher. And that left my mother as the main breadwinner at running a daycare. And so, yeah, things were tight. And we lived in a tiny house in a rural city here in Michigan, and it it took years until I was old enough to understand the strength and the courage to say, I'm gonna pass on all this money and go do something that I love that I have to pay a ton of money to get to do. He went to a private institution not too far from our house because it accepted 30-year-olds easier than a Michigan State or one of the bigger schools. So he had to make a lot of sacrifices to then get to what he wanted and his dreams. And he ended up teaching for 30, 40 years and just retired a couple years ago. But that path that he took and that struggle that we went through taught me more than I would ever know back then, where it's like, well, why can't we just go on a cruise? Why can't we go do these things? And to do it, to carry the load on your shoulders. I know as a man, I often feel this immense pressure to provide everything and to be perfect all the time and to get out what I need to. But watching him do all that in hindsight, at the time, I didn't know any better, just a child. But now looking back and seeing what he went through to get what he wanted, his dream and his goals, and to where we ended up, was based on his sacrifices. He worked at a pizza place at night and did classes all day, and get home at 1, 2 in the morning, and then go to school at 6 in the morning, and for years. And so he is really that example of what it is in my head to be a man, to do what he needed to do for his family and for him, so that we ended up in a spot where everyone was happy and healthy, um, even though it was difficult. And it was difficult as a kid at times to feel like you didn't have what you needed, when the reality was the opposite. You had everything you needed, you just didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
So I would say for that reason, it's my old man.
I think that's awesome. Mine is my dad too. And so I understand that sentiment in that figure in your life. And what do you do now? What do you how how um has your dad continued to be a model throughout your adult life, for you, as your relationship maybe has changed with him? Has your
Yeah.
relationship changed with him from kid to adult? Have you become more friend? Are you still very parent child style relationship with your dad? Has that helped influence the way you're raising your kids,
Yeah.
in this, especially in this moment too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's not quite a boomer. He's not that old, but he's not too far off. He grew up, in the 60s and 70s as a kid. And so he had a lot of, I'm just going to say, tendencies towards what people who ended up in the MAGA sphere, in he could have ended up there. But I would say that my brother and we've always challenged our parents. And so we have a very adult relationship, very loving, but um, you know, I have no problem calling him out if I need to. And we almost lost him when he was 51, to a massive heart attack. He had to have a quadruple bypass to prevent having a heart attack. And at 51 is pretty young for all that. And so coming out of that, he began to show a little more emotion because, like I said, he comes from a time where men don't cry and don't. Um, so as far as our topic here, I wouldn't say he's the most intelligently masculine gentleman, but what he is, he has grown as a person and is willing to listen to his children when we tell him that he's wrong or that we think he's wrong, which we might not always be correct when we challenge our parents, but I don't often argue unless I know that I'm right. And so we've had great discussions and led to a very positive, parental relationship. We're not like best friends or anything like that, but he'll pick up the phone whenever I need to talk to him, and we do our golf trip every year. We spend 4 days up north drinking beer and playing golf. So
Nothing wrong with that. Going out
no,
and having a good time.
that's
And
his thing. The
well,
golf trip.
yeah. Well, I think too is like for me, I have a working definition of intelligent masculinity, but I think, and we'll get into that as we get towards that question, but not there yet. But I think the the idea around it is the growth aspect in a lot of ways is the willingness to learn and understand, um, because that's a self-reflective process, and we're in a time right now where we have people like Mark Andreessen, uh, part owner of Substack, which is one of the primary platforms that I host my show on, and that's where our largest audience and community is. He's out here saying that, like, he doesn't practice any form of self-reflection or self-evaluation, and he just goes forward and he doesn't question. And I think that's so, that is is one of the most toxic traits of the masculinity that we're facing right now,
Yeah,
and like we're trying to finally fight back against. And I think your dad in a lot of ways showed what the intelligence side of that was the willingness to grow, and the capacity to learn, with while being challenged. Like it
yeah,
wasn't, it seems like he's not you're my way or the highway, or now he's not. Even if he was when you were younger, now it may not be that way, where he's willing to listen and learn and hear what you have
yeah.
to say. And I think that
Even
shows
when
a
he doesn't
start.
want to,
Hmm.
he
Yeah.
will.
And that's the hardest time, but the most important time is when you don't want
Right.
to. um, but that's when you need to listen, because that's when you listen to learn and not to respond. um, and so I think that's a really valuable thing. So it's good that you had that too, that figure. Can you, um, we're going to now switch, can you switching, can you talk about the other end of the spectrum in your life? Is masculinity is true masculinity is a better humaning aspect. It is full spectrum humaning. You are a complete human being. Unfortunately, we in our society have shifted the way we talk about humaning into masculine and feminine, and men,
Mhm.
you can't go on the feminine side. That's unfortunate, or that's what some folks think. I don't believe that shit. I think everybody needs full masculinity or full humaning to be a good person, because you got to be a
Sure.
complete person to be able to do things. And so some of the most important people are the feminine aspect. So who has been the most influential feminine figure in your life, and why?
Yeah. So going off my first answer, this fairly simple stretch to say that that was my mother. Um, and when my dad was at work or at school, she was the head of the household. And so we were with her, if we weren't at school, we were with her all the time. So she was the example for me, of what it is to be a woman and to raise your kids and take care of the family. Whereas my dad was taking care of the family further down the road. She was doing the day to day, the paying the bills, raising the children, handing out the consequences when needed to be handed out, and um, doing it all with an incredible amount of grace and um, I don't know, a positive spirit that I know that if I was feeling like things were tough, I look back now and she was carrying an immense amount of our family responsibility on her shoulders at all times. And both my brother and I had to have many surgeries, allergies, and I've had tubes 5 times. So I was in and out of doctor's appointments and all this stuff. And she really carried that load. And our relationship today, I talk to her once or twice a day most of the time. And for a while I thought that was like I wasn't supposed to. Well, in college it was a little bit less, but now as an adult, we're talking at least once a day, and then FaceTiming with the grandkids. And we're still we have a very close relationship. And my view of what femininity looks like, the lens is through her, you know, for my spouse and my kids, and what I would love if my daughters grew up to be like her. Um, so
I think that's great. How have you, and my mom also, mm, second, the most important feminine figure in my life. And so I I'm glad you had that same positive experience from a powerful female figure in your life, very close, that was with you from the start. And how have you taken those lessons that your mom has passed on to internalize them into yourself to make yourself a better human? Like what is one of the best tools maybe that your mom passed on to you through her teachings as and parentings that you've continued to use throughout your life?
um, being a good person, like for her, it was always she had her rules. We could never say the word shut up, and we couldn't do certain things. Um, didn't want us fighting. Didn't want She wanted us to be good people. And we went to church every Sunday, and we listened, and went to school every day. And she made sure we had the opportunities for growth, and then encouraged us to be better people when we weren't. But everything that she does, it was for us, was for her boys, my brother and I. It was so that we can be better people, and that we need to be those people for our little people that we're raising. And that basically it's our job to make sure that we're as good a people as we can possibly be, so that our parents are proud, and that now with our kids, that they will be proud one day, that they're doing things the right way, being honest and caring, and you know, all
I
those
love that.
traits.
Yeah, I'm glad that's something that your mom passed on. I mean, that's something that most of us really just need to embody right now. It's okay to be nice, and it's okay to
Yeah.
care and feel. And that leads really well into the my next question here is, I know it's not a common term, is intelligent masculinity. Most people have probably never thought about the idea of masculinity being in quote intelligent, because we have framed it so often and forced it into such a negative field and negative view, and we've taught a lot of men really negative things and really bad habits, and so I decided to use the term intelligent masculinity because it needed to be something smart and something new. And I wanted to get your thoughts though on what does that phrase mean to you? What does intelligent masculinity mean to you?
I think the first thing I think, at least for myself, is that you have to be able to grow. We kind of talked about that. Um, we are incomplete people. We never get to complete, but we've got to work towards getting there. And as a man, if you're not willing to listen, learn, you know, think deeply, not just move on to the next thing. Why did I do that? Could I have done it differently? How am I going to do it the next time? That sort of self-reflection. And you've got to be able to grow. But also that integrity plays a role. You can't be a masculine person if you're dishonest. You can't be intelligently masculine if you're a dishonest person, stealing, doing things for your own personal gain that is going to hurt someone else. And using your head, I think too many people have a notion of masculinity as you fly off the handle and you just react, and I it's never been the way I've operated. I always contemplate, sometimes to a detriment. I'm thinking too much before making a response, and to me that would be intelligently masculine. Thinking first and then doing.
I think that's great. Let me add my definition for you. So I've been working on
Good.
this thesis, and I think it fit. I came on this early on, but I think it fits really well with what I've been doing and the discussions I've been having with other men around this. Like we've had, I think you're the 24th or 25th interview or something
Wow.
along those lines in the last 3 months, and every single one of the men that I've interviewed have shown this in some way, shape, or form really well throughout the discussion, talked about it, what they do in their lives is intelligent masculinity is the refusal to outsource accountability onto others and the discipline to live with the consequences of your values and actions. And that brings me back to what you were talking to about your dad and the way that he purposely chose a career path that wasn't the easy one, but he had to live with that decision every day.
Yeah.
And yes, it made you guys less wealthy, but it brought him happiness and added to his happiness and joy in his life and did provide. And he was willing to live with those consequences. He was willing to live with being less well off. And so maybe you can use that in your arsenal as thinking about it too. Is I think your dad showed a lot of intelligent masculinity. Maybe at times he didn't. Maybe at times he was less intelligent about it. But I think that that one decision really wonderful is a
Yeah.
wonderful example of it. Um, and so using that definition and using what we talk about here is my next question is how do you model intelligent masculinity in your own life? Because you have 4 kids and you're a teacher. So you have a lot of you discuss your influence is fairly large for a sphere of influence, especially on a younger generation.
Yeah.
And so, how do you model this in your own life to ensure that you are passing these values on?
So the first thing I want to talk about here is the notion of growing. I'm a white dude from rural Michigan, more cows than people in my hometown. Um, and it took leaving that, going to college, getting my teaching degree, and then for the very first time in my life, the first day that I taught, I was the minority in a space. Um, as a white man in a classroom with black children. Um, and I've taught in schools that were anywhere from 90 to 95% African American, and that 5% is generally Hispanic and an occasional Asian child. And so, what I had in my head about other cultures leaving rural Michigan is nowhere close to where I am today as a culturally competent, still working towards it, but someone who strives to be culturally competent. A lot of growth and trauma had to occur between my first day teaching till now. And I would say for the first 3 or 4 years, it was a constant battle between myself, what I'm feeling and what I think should happen versus where I was. Uh, it's called my biases. Where I started the conversation to where I ended up, it took 3 or 4 years, and I was very, very fortunate to have people willing to challenge me and understand that it's not their job to make me less biased, but some people that were willing to take on the challenge to say, hey, that's not right. The way you said that sounds this way. Realizing that in my heart, I thought I was doing what I was supposed to. I thought I was doing it right. But in my head, knowing that if what I'm putting out into the world isn't being receptive to all these black children, I'm doing it wrong. It's not their fault. They don't have to figure out how I operate. I need to figure out how they operate. And so for me and for my kids, they've seen me grow, towards a person comfortable in any environment with people that don't look like myself, and someone willing to put themselves into a spot where they're the minority, and they're the minority in a room. It might sound wrong, but I want for my kids to be able to challenge their own notions and go into spaces that they might be uncomfortable with, because you need to be more complete. You need to work towards being a better person and being a more culturally intelligent person. So that's kind of the first side of it. The second part is I teach at a juvenile detention center um, here in my city that I live in, and you think detention centers, jails, prisons is a masculine hierarchy, tough guy at the top, weak guy at the bottom, and everything in between. And I'm a phys ed teacher. I don't know if I said that earlier. So I'm a gym teacher, and that comes with some pretty traditional stereotypes of, I do wear a tracksuit every day to work because I want to, but it comes with a lot of stereotypes of pretty toxic masculine nonsense. And I but I'm not, I don't operate that way. So at school, especially at the detention center, I'm able to show a different side of what being an athlete might look like. I'm not a stereotypical athlete. I play all the sports, but I don't look like one. I'm a photographer and a political activist. I'm not a traditional jock meathead type. And showing kids that there's other ways in this adventure to being masculine, and I can play the role of stereotypical masculine gym teacher. There are parts of me at times that maybe gets a little too competitive, or um, maybe hits just at some of the teacher stereotypes, but I strive to show them a different way of doing things. And I'm very thankful. Gen Z, is it Gen Alpha?
Gen Alpha, the new ones, yeah.
The new ones, they vibe more with it now than we did even 15 years ago. The notion of being masculine, you can be masculine, intelligently masculine, and be into anime and Spider-Man in a way that 20 years ago you're a nerd. But the toughest kid in my detention center right now is a big anime guy. He draws and does poetry, and he's the toughest man in the building. You know, so it's I would say those are the ways, and obviously modeling those things that I believe about myself at work and growth, doing that at home as well, and being willing to share that journey and share the difficulties, um,
So
you
I
can
know
go through.
sorry, I know you
Go
may
ahead.
not be able to talk about some of the obviously the kids themselves in any way, but like as a teacher and as someone who works at a juvenile detention center, which is not what I was expecting for your teaching.
Yeah,
I don't think we talked about that when we were together.
might not have.
But how has that shaped the way you approach teaching in general? Because my view on like well, my view on jailing folks is our system is really punitive in a lot of ways, and it's not corrective in very many of them. How do you use your position to help correct and teach these? I mean, you've been talking about your modeling and how you model it, but like, how have you helped shape the way that they can get out of juvenile detention and onto a path towards being a good adult citizen, and
Yeah.
growing through these experiences?
So teaching at the detention center is relationship building. You're getting to know someone and sharing parts of you that you and it's a reciprocal relationship. And so I'm pretty fortunate. My teaching job is a lot different from everyone else's teaching job, a traditional classroom, but it's a lot of patience and grace and listening, and then showing an acceptance of the person, not necessarily the decisions that they've made to get to that moment, but that I can care about you and love you as a student and not, you know, be down on you all the time for this thing that you've done. And I make it a point. I try not to even learn what kids' cases are, and sometimes it comes out. But for me, there, the way I'm trying to is like I've been saying, showing a different model of a man. I'm not a 6'2" muscle bound jock gym teacher, but that I would say it's a mix of showing and then communicating back and forth to the point where they trust me enough to listen to me and then to talk about things. And I'm not all the way there with the answer in my head and how I wanted to say it, but it's relationship building and showing how they can then build relationships that are healthy outside. Not every kid has the choice of where they end up, and 80-ish% in my mind are there because of the adults in their lives, because of the mistakes made on their behalf leading up to things that have happened, and showing them not every adult is that way, and that you can seek out meaningful relationships with people. And one of the things I've been doing is building connections through photography. All of my kids want to be artists, whether that's a rapper or make music videos, photographers. They connecting there. I'm a gym teacher, but I'm also a concert photographer. I share some of my work, and I shared what I did in Minneapolis, and showing them a way that looks different from what they know. And it's not always easy, and times it's hard to find the grace that you need, but for the most part, um, I wouldn't trade this job for any other teaching job in the world right now. I like going to work every day, and as a teacher in a urban school, the school before, there are days where you don't want to put that smile on and open the door and walk into the building when it's underfunded. You don't have enough equipment. The kids are going to be a mess. You know, so not sure if I totally answered your question,
No, I
but
think that's
trying to
fantastic.
get there.
I really appreciate that.
Daddy, can you use the
Son just got home from school. Um,
All good. Mine did a little while ago. I don't know if you heard that.
I saw you doing like the dad hand gestures.
Yeah.
Like, yep, here you. That's good. Yep,
Mhm.
I see
Close
you.
the door.
Um, have Do you still have relationships with some of the kids that you've taught, that have gone on to be able to maybe get out of the system, and move forward in their life? Because, like you said, not all of them are there by their own fault. Some are there by their fault, and but have made changes, or some can't really get out of it in the long run. Have you been able to keep relationships with some of the kids that you've worked with, and, um, throughout the years, and is that something that you continue to try and do?
So because I've taught in the community for a long time, I already have some pre-built relationships with some of my young men and young ladies. Um, I taught there for a year, so I haven't had a ton of experience post. This was my first year on the job, but I've had 36 former students in 1 year of teaching at the detention center, which was kind of jaw-dropping for me. And most of them came from my last school that I was at for 8 years. And it's with those young men and young ladies, I obviously have a relationship with them. We're not encouraged to seek out anything, but some of them, like I said, there's already a relationship there. And I had a rule where social media and whatnot, I would never follow you back until you weren't at school. So when you move on to the next thing in life, then we can connect outside of my Instagram page. They can like and follow my photos and do that sort of thing. But so some of them I do see, and I actually just ran into a young man at a photo shoot the other night who was doing really well and seemed to be in a good spot. Um, hadn't reoffended, had gotten off of his tether, and he was very excited to share that with me.
That's
That
awesome.
was the first thing he said. I said, "Just got off my tether." And it's like it was great. It was good to see him smiling and happy and not confined. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I think one, success stories for teachers just in general are really amazing. I've had some really impactful teachers in my life, like really, really impactful teachers. And I know how important that can be when you're either really down or in a really hard spot. I've never been to juvenile detention or I've never been incarcerated, so I don't know that side of it, but I do know I was a I was a student once. I've gone through a lot of school, and those relationships can be really powerful and last for a really long time. I also like that you put a small separation, but that distinct separation though between your personal and your uh, your professional and your private, so that you keep that wall and you maintain and you show there's a space for certain openness, but there's also sometimes a space for I'm not going to
yeah,
do that because that's inappropriate, and that's having those ability to say no, and or hear the word no is really important in my eyes as a man, and like that's a really really valuable thing. So I think may have been a smaller thing you said, but I think really important part of what you said. And
boundaries are very important. Teaching at the juvenile detention center, sharing too much of yourself can lead to negative outcomes in many different directions.
yeah,
But being a good person and being a relationship builder and working with kids, those outcomes are generally going to be positive. Um, not every kid likes me, I'm sure, but they come to learn that I'm a consistent person doing what I think is best, that I'm not there to punish them. That's not my job. The system takes care of all that. So I don't put any of that on them. It's we have a good time in the gym playing whatever sports were permitted that day.
yeah,
So
I think that's great. And
well,
so
Dart.
let's we're nearing the top of our hour already, which didn't seem like we would have
No,
gotten that so quickly. Is this has been really a really good discussion, and I'm really glad we got to talk about your teaching experiences and what that's been like for you, and the how you've gotten into teaching, and like because it seems like it's almost a family thing. Is
it,
the want
it, it
and the
is.
drive to teach. Is let's shift over to our little bit of a whimsical side to close
Let's
out the
do it.
show, because we always start with our serious questions, but then, as everyone knows, if you've been here before, if you haven't been here before, hey, welcome to the final part of Intelligent Masculinity, where we go into a song from Mulan, which is "I'll Make a Man Out of You." It's the clarion call for action for men choir kids specifically, I was a choir kid growing up or in high school, so we sang this song all the time. And I was in the
I
men's
was
choir.
probably making fun of you with the football team.
I was probably I also made fun of the choir kids while I was on my soccer team because I was one of them. So I
Yeah.
played sports and
Yeah. We should.
oh,
I think we froze there
am I
for a
back?
second.
I think we froze. We kids decided to take up for a moment because they're playing video games right now. But I love the Mulan theme song, or it's not really the theme song, but to me it is. It's the "Let's Go Girls" for boys to give us something fun to pump up about. But it also has some really interesting lessons in it with the chorus line that are kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
And so I took the chorus line and I turned it into 4 quick lightning round questions. There's no wrong answer to these questions. You can be as whimsical, you can be serious, you can be whatever you want for these questions. This is up to you. And so here we go. First, what does it mean to you to be as swift as a coursing river?
All right. I took this 2 ways. Swift as a coursing river. One, you've got to be able to move where you need to go. You've got to be quick on your feet and in your mind to adapt to the situations that you're put in. But at the same time, a river will up and move itself when it needs to, and it'll leave a mark on the earth. Look at the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon. It's left its mark there, and it did that while adapting to what it needed to adapt to. So I think that's
Perfect.
where. Yeah.
Perfect. Great answer. I love it. Next, how do you embody the force of a great typhoon?
You've got to be willing to stand up and allow yourself to be important and impactful and strong in moment, and do the hard thing. The typhoon isn't always good. You wouldn't think, but you have to be willing to make those decisions and to stand upon them.
Perfect. How are you as strong as a raging fire?
I don't have as whimsical of an answer for that. Just that inner strength and making sure that you yourself are taking care of yourself to be able to show strength for those around you, and work on part of that's physical strength, part of that's emotional strength, so.
Perfect. Next, second to last question of the day is how are you as mysterious as the dark side of the moon?
Staying quiet. It's not always the most intelligent people who are speaking the loudest, but reserving that and thinking and making sure that not everyone knows everything about you. If there's no mystery, people make quick decisions, and I don't know. I think it pays benefit to being quiet and letting people figure out who you are, as opposed to telling them who you are and then having some conflict there.
I think that's great. I think that's a great answer. I think all the answers have been great for us. This has been a really fun conversation and really good to get to know you in this way. And thank you for going into your experiences and telling us about yourself. I know it's not always comfortable speaking about some of the experiences in life, but it's also really important. And so, one of my other and final question of the day is because I like to make sure others can be followed and supported. Um, I didn't I didn't use your primary platform, but I will include all of the links for your platforms because they're linked on your Substack too, for
Okay.
easy people to find. Because I write I will put out the show probably sometime tomorrow with our write-up in it. It'll include all the links to your profiles, but I do have a QR code here, if my screen will turn to the next scene, for you here on Substack that people can find you at. Is how can people support work that you do outside of the teaching, the photography, the activism work? How can people support you on those sides?
Well, one, I'd love it if people followed my photography Instagram. The algorithms on Instagram are brutal. I hate them. They really don't share people's work very well like it once did. But I'd love it if people followed Valor Media Network on YouTube. I'm not sure if I put that on my Substack or not, but maybe I'll throw it up there. That way we can get the message out. It's a great group of people working on veterans issues, but also democracy issues through a veteran's lens. I'm not a veteran, but I think one of the keys to keeping us from devolving into a fascist state, more so than we already are, is activating that network of veterans who fought and did everything and sacrificed, who maybe can get sucked into other places if they're not. I would love it if you follow Valor. We're doing a rebrand that I'm helping guide along, doing some logo work, and so we hopefully in the next couple weeks will look a little bit different. I'm gonna have to make a new sweatshirt, but yeah, if you could follow Valor and then maybe follow my Instagram, I post all my photography there. You can see some of my children on there as well.
Awesome. And I will make sure to include all our links for Valor Media in the post show notes, because I support the shit out of Valor and the work you guys are doing.
It's a good group.
Yeah, it is a great group. Most of us in the audience know a lot of the team at Valor. And if you support Chris Goldsmith, if you support Ken Harbaugh, you support the Valor Media Network. If you support Forrest, you support Valor Media. And it's a great group. And Forrest, thanks again so much for being with us today. For this has been, again, really great discussion. I'm glad I got to spend part of the afternoon with you today and do this. And everyone in the audience, thank you so much for being here with us today. Again, I'm Nick Parrow. This is Intelligent Masculinity on Sick of This Shit Publications. And as always, let's stop being sick of this shit, friends, and let's start doing this shit. So thanks, Forrest. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and I'll see y'all again.